The quiet hum of existence had become a deafening silence. You followed the rules, checked all the boxes, built the life you were told would bring you peace. Yet a hollow ache persisted, a gnawing emptiness that no accomplishment could fill. It's not a lack of progress, but a profound disconnect. This is the rock bottom, not of failure, but of having done everything right and finding yourself utterly unmoved. This quiet crisis is the myth of Narcissus, stripped of its common interpretation. It's not vanity that drives us to gaze endlessly, but a deep, primal starvation. The ego, seeking sustenance, finds its only available food in its own reflection. It becomes captivated by the image it has crafted, mistaking this self-absorption for fulfillment. Jung warned of the persona, the carefully constructed outward self we present to the world. But what if this persona isn't a helpful tool, but a prison? What if, in our drive to be accepted, we've built a tomb for our true essence? This manufactured self, born from the fear of judgment and the desperate need for mirroring, leaves the soul unfed. Nietzsche spoke of the destruction of soothing morality, the comforting lies we tell ourselves to avoid confronting the abyss. We traded the raw, untamed truth of our being for the applause of others, for the safety of fitting in. We became experts at reflecting what others wanted to see, becoming less and less ourselves in the process. This video asks you to face that stark trade, to witness the ashes of the self you built out of fear. It's not about rebuilding, but about allowing the manufactured images to burn, revealing what lies beneath, if anything at all. The descent into this inner desolation feels like utter chaos, a confusing unraveling of everything you thought you knew. But this isn't mere disorientation, it's something far more ancient, far more insidious. It is the feeling of being hijacked, of your own life no longer feeling truly your own. This unsettling sensation is not a sign of mental weakness, but a profound, often unconscious form of possession. Something has taken root, dictating your thoughts, shaping your desires, and steering your actions. This alien force whispers incentives that feel like yours, but originate from a place you cannot quite identify. It's a subtle invasion, a creeping influence that blurs the lines between your authentic self and an imposed identity. You might find yourself driven by compulsions, anxieties, or cravings that seem to have no logical origin within your own history or personality. This feeling of being controlled, of your well-being not entirely your own, is the first sign that the collapse you're experiencing is not confusion, but possession by an external, or perhaps an exiled, disowned part of yourself. The confusion is the veil over this deeper truth. You weren't trying to connect, you were trying not to disappear. But what happens when even your silence becomes performative? In the next section, we'll expose the fear behind stillness. And real quick, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more videos just like this. Now let's keep going. The reflection you've been so devoted to isn't sustenance, it's a mirage in a barren land. You've poured your energy, your very being, into nurturing an image, a self-constructed idol. But this worship is born not of abundance, but of a desperate, gnawing hunger. Narcissus, the myth tells us, was captivated by his own reflection in the water. But this isn't a tale of vanity, it's an allegory for a soul in extremis. He didn't fall in love with his beauty because he had an excess of self-love, but because there was nothing else to love, nothing else to connect with. The soul, starved of genuine connection, of authentic experience, turns inward. It finds solace not in being, but in appearing. The image becomes the only reality, the only thing that can be grasped. This fixation is a desperate attempt to fill a void, a frantic search for meaning in a self-created echo chamber. The more time spent gazing at this reflection, the deeper the starvation becomes, a paradox that traps the individual in a cycle of self-adoration that leads only to decay. He wasn't vain, he was famished, devouring his own essence in a futile effort to slake a spiritual thirst. This desperate act is the core of why the collapse isn't confusion, but possession. The true self is being consumed by its own phantom. The approval you chase is just a mask for a childhood void. But what happens when the mask stops working? In the next part, we explore identity collapse through the lens of abandonment. The persona, that carefully crafted facade, is often mistaken for a protection, a shell that shields the vulnerable inner self from the harsh realities of the world. But this interpretation misses a crucial, chilling truth about its nature. This outward presentation, so meticulously maintained, is not a shield but a sarcophagus. It's where the vital, untamed parts of yourself are placed for safekeeping, and in doing so, are effectively entombed. Every expectation met, every opinion suppressed, every desire catalogued and hidden away adds another layer to this stone enclosure. It's a monument to conformity, built brick by brick from the rubble of your authentic desires. The silence you cultivate, the agreeable nods, the carefully chosen words all serve to reinforce the walls of this tomb. You meticulously polish the exterior, hoping to distract from the stillness within, the absence of breath that signifies profound loss. The persona is not a mask hiding your true face. It is the tomb in which your truest self lies buried, its heartbeat silenced by the weight of external validation and the fear of genuine exposure. And this entombment is the consequence of believing you were starving. When you contort yourself to be the person you believe others want you to be, a subtle, insidious transformation occurs. It's not growth, it's an erosion. Each compromise, each sacrifice of your own truth chips away at your core. The more you bend to the will of others, the more you mirror their desires and aspirations, the less of your original self remains. You become a composite, a patchwork of borrowed identities, a ghost wearing the clothes of the living. This transformation is not a becoming, but an unbecoming. You don't gain substance. You dissolve into the reflections you so desperately try to inhabit. The more you achieve their love, the further you drift from your own existence. It's a slow fading, a surrender of your unique frequency to blend into the background noise of societal expectation. The very essence of your being is sacrificed on the altar of acceptance, leaving an echo where a vibrant soul once resided. The more you become what they love, the less you truly are, a frightening paradox where the pursuit of belonging leads to absolute existential erasure. This erosion is the terrifying outcome of Narcissus's desperate thirst. The heavy blanket of lethargy, the pervasive sense of anhedonia, the inability to find joy in anything, these are often pathologized, reduced to clinical diagnoses. But what if this profound stillness is not a malfunction, but a message? This deep, internal malaise, this soul-level exhaustion, is not a disorder to be medicated away. It is the spirit's primal scream, its rebellion against a life lived in authentic alignment. It's the body's refusal to continue conforming. When the external world offers no solace and the internal landscape feels barren, the soul withdraws. This isn't surrender, it's a strategic retreat, a necessary pause for self-preservation when the spirit is drowning in the manufactured realities of existence. Depression, in this light, becomes the soul's desperate attempt to reclaim itself. It's the crushing weight of unlived life, the accumulated grief of silenced truths, pressing down until something has to break. It is the earth giving way, not to signify ruin, but to reveal the hidden springs of authentic being that the constant performance had buried too deep to access. It's the body's quiet, powerful refusal to continue pretending, a testament to its own intrinsic rebellion against the dying of the light. Imagine standing before a mirror, and for the first time, seeing not just your features, but the unyielding gaze of your own past choices, your unaddressed regrets, your authentic desires finally demanding recognition. This is the essence of Nietzsche's eternal return. This philosophical concept is not about cyclical reincarnation, but about radical self-acceptance. It's the profound challenge to live each moment as if you would gladly relive it an infinite number of times without alteration or evasion. When you avoid confronting your inner truth, you construct elaborate systems of denial, mirrors that distort your own image, allowing you to escape the profound weight of your own being. You refuse to truly see yourself. But the universe, in its relentless unfolding, offers no escape. The eternal return is the cosmic mirror that insists on showing you what you've tried to hide, the totality of yourself, the unvarnished truth of your existence. This confrontation is terrifying because it means facing the parts of yourself you've exiled, the dreams you've abandoned, the person you might have been had you not been afraid. It's the mirror that won't look away, forcing and reckoning with the choices that have led you to this starved reflection. There's a relentless pursuit, a gnawing ache for something just beyond reach. You find yourself fixated on a particular outcome, a specific person, an elusive feeling. This isn't mere desire, it's a trance. This obsessive focus is a spell woven from the threads of deep, unmet needs. You crave the image of what you believe will finally fill the void, the illusion that promises completion. It's not the reality you desire, but the dazzling picture projected onto your inner darkness. You are drawn to the image that is killing you, a moth to a flame that offers no warmth, only destruction. This compulsion stems from a profound disconnect, a starving soul projecting its desires onto an unattainable ideal. The fantasy becomes more real than the tangible world, a gilded cage built from the echoes of what you lack. You sacrifice present reality for the tantalizing promise of a future fulfillment that remains forever out of grasp. This obsession is a desperate, misdirected prayer, an incantation aimed at a phantom, born from the deep wound of not being able to see your own worth outside of this projected image. It's the consequence of that starvation's reflection. Every moment you spend seeking external affirmation is a prayer sent into the void, a desperate plea for validation that originates from a place of profound lack. You're not praying for connection, but for permission to exist. This addiction to validation is a misdirected form of worship. Instead of turning inward to find the divine spark within, you prostrate yourself before the altar of others' opinions, seeking a reflection of worth that can only truly be found within. Each compliment, each like, each nod of approval becomes a temporary balm on a wound that festers unseen. You become dependent on these external accolades, mistaking them for the nourishment your soul so desperately craves. This cycle perpetuates the starvation because the true source of love and acceptance remains untouched, buried beneath layers of performative compliance and the desperate need to be seen. You're praying to an echo, not to a source. Your addiction is a prayer not for awakening, but for continued existence within the illusion, a frantic attempt to feed a hunger that can never be satisfied by borrowed light. It's a plea for more of the illusion, not for freedom from it. What we call darkness is often not an inherent evil, but a sacred space of what has been cast out. The shadow is not a place of sin, but of exile, a desolate landscape where our lost selves reside. The light we fear to confront, the parts of our innate being that we deem too wild, too vulnerable, or too imperfect, are relegated to this hidden realm. They are not destroyed, but simply banished, left to wait in the dim corners of our psyche. This abandonment is a trauma. The disowned aspects of ourselves are not monstrous, they are simply unfinished. They are parts of our potential, fragments of our wholeness, yearning for reintegration. When we deny these exiled parts, we dim our own radiance. The vibrancy and depth of our true selves are diminished by the very act of repression. We become less than we are meant to be. The shadow is not a void of darkness, but a graveyard of abandoned light, waiting for the courage of recognition to be resurrected into the full spectrum of being. This unrecognized light is the deepest source of our suffering. The overwhelming feeling of being shattered, of your world crumbling around you, feels like a fundamental failure. You interpret this unraveling as confusion, a chaotic descent into meaninglessness. But this isn't chaos, it's a cosmic recalibration. This inner collapse is not an accident, but an initiation. It is the universe's way of dismantling the false edifice you have inhabited, so that something real can finally take its place. It's the great unmaking before the true making. The systems you relied upon, the identities you clung to, the narratives that defined you are all being tested. The pressure is immense because the stakes are the highest possible, the very essence of your being. When the supports give way, when the structures designed to comfort you crumble, you are forced to confront the naked reality of your existence. This is the dark night of the soul, not a punishment, but a profound rite of passage. This internal implosion is the gateway, the tearing through of the veil that separates the constructed self from the essential, the beginning of a profound transformation. It is a necessary end to birth a more authentic beginning. The pervasive feeling of emptiness, of not quite being real, of living a life that feels borrowed or second-hand, is Kierkegaard's sickness unto death. It's a despair that doesn't lead to an end, but to a persistent, agonizing not quite living. This sickness is rooted in our relationship with ourselves. It's the profound alienation from our own true nature, the refusal to embrace the self that lies beneath the carefully constructed persona and the desperate need for external approval. When we fail to authentically encounter our own existence, when we choose to be a reflection rather than a source, we fall into this deep spiritual malaise. The self becomes a phantom, an echo of what it could be. This detachment from one's own being is the core of the false self's existence. It thrives on imitation, on the borrowed vitality of others' expectations, never truly finding purchase in its own ground. It is the essence of living unreally. The sickness unto despair is the condition of the false self, a perpetual state of unreality, an existence defined by what it is not rather than what it is, a suffering born of never truly facing the self in the mirror. And this false self cannot truly awaken. You stand at a precipice, a space between what was and what might be. The familiar ground behind you has eroded, and the path ahead is shrouded in mist. This isn't a moment of choice. It's a recognition of inevitable return. The threshold is not a doorway you decide to open, but a boundary that has become unavoidable. It represents the point where the constructed self can no longer sustain itself, where the facade has become too heavy to bear. You are not choosing to cross into a new state of being, but realizing that the natural order of things has brought you to this inevitable point of transition. It is a deepening, a moving through rather than a stepping over. This return is to a place of greater authenticity, a shedding of the accumulated layers of artifice. It is the soul's innate pullback towards its original blueprint, a recalibration that feels like both an ending and a homecoming. The threshold is not a decision you make, but the natural point of disintegration for the false self, leading not to a new beginning, but to an ancient, forgotten return. And this disintegration is the only path forward. When love is built on the foundation of an image, on the curated perfection of a persona, it ceases to be a communion of souls and becomes a form of possession. You are not loving the person, but the reflection you have so carefully polished. This attachment is not born of selfless affection, but of ownership. You hold on to the image, not the essence, mistaking the created picture for the living, breathing entity it represents. It's a cage, not a connection. The desire to control, to maintain the illusion of perfection, becomes paramount. Any deviation from the projected ideal is seen as a threat, a betrayal of the idealized self that was the object of affection. This form of love lacks the vulnerability and acceptance that true connection requires. It is a contract based on maintaining appearances, a fragile structure that crumbles at the slightest breeze of reality. Love built on image is not a partnership of equals, but a subtle form of holding captive, a desperate clinging to a reflection that starves the very soul it claims to adore. This possession is the inevitable outcome of the false self's desperate bid for connection. The false self, the constructed identity built from societal expectations and the fear of rejection, is not capable of true awakening. It is an imitation, a hollow echo that cannot spontaneously generate its own spirit. It is a facade, a temporary arrangement designed to navigate a world that demands conformity. It lacks the inherent spark of genuine being, the vibrant, untamed core that defines authentic existence. Therefore, it cannot be refined or reformed into something real. Its very nature is dependence, its sustenance derived from external validation, not from an internal source of truth. It is inherently hollow. The only possibility for this false construct is not transformation, but dissolution. It must be allowed to crumble, to disintegrate, to return to the elements from which it was wrongly assembled. The false self cannot awaken to truth and life. Its existence is predicated on illusion. Its ultimate fate is not transcendence, but a complete and irreversible disintegration, revealing the potential for what lies beneath. The instinct is to rebuild, to patch the cracks, to salvage what remains of the tattered self. But this is the wrong direction. The goal is not restoration, but utter annihilation of the false. Do not try to mend the pieces. Do not attempt to reassemble the fragments of the life you thought you had. The old structure is irredeemably flawed, built on the shifting sands of fear and external validation. Instead, embrace the immolation. Watch with quiet reverence as the images you've held dear, the roles you've played, the person you've convinced yourself you are, burn away. This is not an act of destruction, but of purification. It is the alchemical process of reducing the dross to reveal the gold, the necessary burning off of the superficial to allow the true self to finally emerge from the ashes. Do not rise through effort or will. Rise only when the false self has completely disintegrated, its images consumed, leaving behind not a rebuilt structure, but a vast, open space for something genuinely new to inhabit. This is not the end of your story, but the stark, unvarnished beginning. And now that the images have burned, we can finally begin to understand the nature of what remains and the profound initiation it represents. Now that concludes this video. Make sure to subscribe for more videos and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new video. We'll see you in the next one.